This is my second response video to Kieran KD's book's triptych of videos 10, insert error here, classics you must read, where I provide an alternative list of 10 classics you must read, but that you also might actually enjoy reading, for booktubers with taste. We're up to modern classics, which Kieran defines as anything published on or after the 1st of January 1900, but before the 1st of January 2000. Which includes a considerable number of pretty amazing books, making it even more impressive that Kieran has managed to cater so well for people with terrible taste in literature. If that's you, and I'm relatively sure you know who you are, I recommend checking out Kieran's video. But remember, this is a man whose favourite book involves police doing unspeakable things to a goat. Booktube, can you really trust him? I won't be revealing the 10 books Kieran recommended, lest any of you get confused and accidentally pick one of them up. But here's a summary of my experience with them. 3 DNSs, that's did not start. But we're going to assume that they're terrible based on the company that they keep. 1 DNF, that's so bad I couldn't even be bothered finishing the book. There's 2 1-star reads, 2 2-star reads, a 4-star read, and a 5-star read? What? How did that get there? We're going to go through these books in publication order, and we're starting with Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, published in 1938. And I know what some of you are thinking, Scott, how can you call this a video about modern literature if you've literally skipped all the modernists? And I have 2 things to say. 1, I didn't make the rules. 2, James Joyce, Proust, Woolf, Kafka, Mann, Faulkner. Nobody actually enjoys these authors. The only reason people aren't more vocal in their hatred of these authors is that the beats exist. I mean, I'd read 10 Kafka books before I'd even think of touching a Kerouac. Oh, back to Rebecca. I think including Rebecca on this list might raise a few eyebrows, but not from anybody who has actually read it. It's a psychological thriller that has all the excitement of the best trashy bestseller, but with a character study that is better than Crime and Punishment. Throw in a few strong feminist themes and the fact that there are so many different and influential authors that have drawn inspiration from this novel. Rebecca is dead from the start of the novel, yet her presence hangs over the novel as an unnamed protagonist marries her widowed husband. It's not just her characters. Mandalay is a creepy AF setting, and the plot is fantastically simple but so well executed. The more we understand about the characters, the more exciting and the more tense the plot becomes. An exciting book with its fingerprints all over cozy mystery, crime, thriller, and literary fiction. Animal Farm. Okay, so I could talk about this allegorical tale of animals taking over a farm and running it for themselves as a warning against totalitarianism, and all that is wonderful and really well done, but Orwell as an author is so important to literature for a reason that is so rarely discussed. Orwell popularized doing things simply, being easy to read, being accessible, having a book that everybody can read and analyze and understand, and that is why Animal Farm is on this list. I think the reason most people find classic literature harder to read than new release is not because they spoke differently back then, they definitely did, but because it was normal to write for the few, and modern literature writes to the masses, it writes to everybody, and therefore it owes a huge debt to Orwell. I really could have picked any Orwell novel to add to this list, although I am amused by Stalin banning Animal Farm for it being anti-communist, and calls in the US to ban it for being pro-communist. Animal Farm itself is anti-totalitarianism, which could be seen as anti-fascist or anti-communist or anti-really any form of authoritarian government. But it does pick a communist example to retell, and to be completely fair to Uncle Joe, it does frame him as the bad guy, it's a perfect political satire and a warning about all sorts of government. Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with this. We all know what it is. Yeah, it's pretty good. I gave it 5 stars. James Baldwin, Giovanni's Room. This is the love story of David, a homophobic man who is engaged to a woman, and Giovanni, a gay man. Baldwin is the master of literature as activism, and this book helps people understand and accept the LGBT community a bit more. But he's done that with a really unlikable and horrible protagonist, and it shows you the effects of homophobia from within the gay community. It's just an amazing example of being well planned and well balanced. It is so intelligent. All of Baldwin's work is so intelligent. He just sees things so much deeper than almost any other author ever. Giovanni's Room is a fantastic example of how emotional prose and intellectual ideas don't need to oppose each other. They can exist simultaneously and create a truly wonderful book. We move ahead to 1969 and Kurt Vonnegut's hit Slaughterhouse-Five. Billy Pilgrim has become unstuck in time. He's experiencing his life in a completely random order. That includes the bombing of Dresden during World War II, an event for which Vonnegut was himself present, and getting abducted by aliens and living in a zoo for a few years, an event which Vonnegut could potentially have been present for, I don't know. With almost all of Vonnegut's books, he is blending science fiction with dark comedy and exploring what it means to be human. It's such a bizarre novel. It's blending themes and ideas we don't often see together. Vonnegut is exploring the idea of determinism along with the idea of free will, right next to the trauma a soldier might experience in a war. Every time you pick up this book, you don't know whether you're going to be thinking, laughing, or feeling, and often it's all three. If you're a fan of those genre-bending novels or emotionally poignant books about mental health, comedy, or philosophy, this is a great book for you. But what I think is even better about this book is Vonnegut is delivering these genres in a way that if you don't really like one of them, well, they sort of become decorative. And if you do like them, they become the major sections, the major parts of this book. If Beale Street could talk, James Baldwin. I know, I've already got a James Baldwin on the list. I thought it was really important to capture the growth and change in civil rights of black people in the 20th century and how those struggles have really never gone away, but how they have changed and what is different about them. And when I was considering which novel best represented that, which novel best represents black people being oppressed not under slavery, I know there are other options out there, but there is just something about James Baldwin that makes him so irresistible. His beautiful prose, his emotionally evocative writing, his deep understanding and communications of the issues at play, his ability to wrap things up in great fiction. He is a brilliant author. And this rather simple novel touches on so many important issues. Woman at Point Zero, Noel El Sadwadi. Published in 1977, this is a modern Arabic classic. Phaedrus is a woman sentenced to death for murder. But how did she get there? This is a super feminist novel about a woman's life, about how she lived. And it's absolutely horrible. And it really reflects the patriarchal nature of Egyptian society and the ingrained oppression it has towards women. Phaedrus is a daughter, she's a wife, she's a prostitute, a business owner, single, successful, poor, at times fragile, but at times strong and resilient. She represents all the various women in Egyptian society, and she represents all the possible choices that she has. She has lived an interesting life. But has she ever been safe? Has she ever been happy? Has she ever been accepted? An emotional coming-of-age story. You must remember, she is about to be executed. Kindred. Kindred is a fantastic example of Afrofuturism, blending sci-fi, historical fiction, magical realness, and so much more. Dana, a modern-day black woman, is transported back in time to visit a young boy named Rufus in the antebellum South. When I say modern, she was modern when Butler wrote the book in the 70s. I don't know if we'd call somebody in the 70s modern now, would we? Dana saves Rufus's life and is transported back to her own time. But then she gets sucked back into Rufus's life and is forced to save him again. She realizes that he is an ancestor of hers, but that he is also going to inherit a lot of slaves, that he is a white man. And she faces all sorts of questions. Can she make him consider slaves as people? Should she just let him die? And if she does let him die, what happens to her? What happens to the slaves? Will they be free or will they go somewhere else? Is she better off trying to influence him into being a better person? And what of her own safety? She is a black woman in the antebellum South, after all. Dana's modern day husband is white, and that just adds another layer to complexity, because Rufus is also white. And Butler is exploring this idea of love and family when people have different coloured skin. There is so much packed into this really fun novel. Ultimately, this is just a really good adventure novel that is so fun to read, but it effortlessly raises all these questions. It is so thought-provoking, and it's one of these books that is growing in popularity, that is growing in influence. It is more relevant every year that passes. Butler is one of these authors who is really exploding into the literary zeitgeist. Milan Kundera, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. Milan Kundera is a Czech-born French writer who is exploring one of the biggest themes in fiction: love. Love, commitment, infidelity. What is a relationship? What do we need from it? What do we take from it? But he sets the novel in Czechoslovakia at a politically unstable point during the Soviet occupation. He is also examining themes of oppression, of censorship, and the impact of political events on everyday lives. But how is he mirroring each different aspect here? How is the relationship mirrored in the society? He's also asking, how does chance, in this case a chance illness, change our life? Also, how does chance political events affect us too? While we, the reader, are grappling with ideas about things like the nature of existence, Kundera is setting up a few emotional gut punches. It is just so beautifully written, and it's another wonderful example of how great fiction can be very, very thought-provoking, and doesn't need to be emotionally arid. It can be quite emotionally written too. Just a wonderful love story, or maybe an anti-love story, between three characters: Thomas, Sabina, and Teresa. Rohinton Mystery, a fine balance. This is not a masterpiece of Indian literature. This is the masterpiece. A family saga, historical fiction, emotionally devastating, politically critical, absurdly funny, satisfying, and educational. This book has everything. In Bombay, a recently widowed woman takes in two tailors to live with her and starts her own business manufacturing clothes with them. They recruit a student lodger to help them make rent. And you wouldn't think that this would create an amazing story. That all sounds relatively simple. But what you need to add to this, the thing that adds the spice, is India and a period of political turbulence taking place around the events that Indian history calls the emergency under the leadership of Indira Gandhi. But this does so much more than teach you and educate you about this brutal point in history. He also wants to show you India. He wants to show you the poverty, the love, the loss, the bureaucracy. He examines the role of women, of caste, of the city and country divide. He details the brutality of the school system, and he's tackling ideas around conforming and thoughtlessly following orders, or cruelty for cruelty's sake, of what people will do to get ahead. I've told you about 9 other amazing books, but if you only read one book from this list, if you only pick up one, make it this one. This is in every way an incredible novel. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because I have one more of Kieran's videos to respond to. And if you hated every book on this list, check out Kieran's video. It's linked in the description. You're probably also a fan of terrible literature. Let me know what books would make your top 10. I had to cut some amazing books to make this list, so I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Bye bye.